It is a truth perhaps not universally acknowledged, but nevertheless observed in many literary circles, that a gentleman in want of publication must oft seek assistance from a woman more skilled with words than himself. Miss Eliza Fairchild, being of practical mind and uncommonly steady pen, had long since resigned herself to a life of modest employment and minor recognition. She possessed no fortune and little patience for sentiment, and was quite content in her post as literary assistant to Mr. Nathaniel Ashworth, a man who, though frequently admired for his cleverness in conversation and charm in company, had not the discipline to set his ideas upon paper in a form suitable for respectable readers. Their partnership had begun under simple pretenses. He had the schemes for a grand tale of daring, devotion, and a certain degree of swoon-worthy peril. She had the grammar. And so it was arranged that Miss Fairchild would ghostwrite what Mr. Ashworth only imagined. It was, at first, a business of notes, dictated scenes, and brisk editorial meetings. Yet somehow, over long evenings of plot revision and shared pots of tea, their story, theirs in every sense, took on a life of its own. Its hero was valiant, its heroine sharp and sincere. There were disguises, declarations, secret letters, and one magnificently timed thunderstorm. Mr. Ashworth was forever praising Miss Fairchild's literary judgment. "You have made my characters come alive," he would say. "You merely gave them the breath of imagination, sir," she would reply. "I only gave them grammar and sense." But Miss Fairchild could not help noticing that Mr. Ashworth grew more animated in her presence. His compliments turned warmer, his smiles lingered. On more than one occasion he likened her to the heroine of their novel. And yet, ever rational, she dismissed it. "He is simply inhabiting the role," she told herself. Men of his sort are often carried away by their own fiction. When at last the manuscript was completed and dispatched to the publisher, she thought their partnership would naturally conclude. But to her surprise, Mr. Ashworth continued to visit, at first with pretense, to discuss cover design or to debate the final paragraph. Then, with none at all, he invited her on country walks, on a picnic, where he brought her favorite plum tarts, though she had never confessed her preference. He brought books she had mentioned in passing, and once a shawl in her favorite shade of green. Miss Fairchild, usually so poised, found herself flustered. One afternoon, while sipping tea in her drawing-room, he having arrived under no particular excuse at all, she could no longer bear the uncertainty. "Mr. Ashworth," she said, placing her teacup very precisely upon its saucer, "may I ask why you persist in calling upon me when there is no longer a book to complete?" He looked quite struck, and then, for the first time she had ever seen, silent. She felt the most curious lurch in her chest. His silence lasted a full half-minute. At last he spoke, very quietly. I suppose I do not quite know, except that I cannot imagine not doing so." He looked at her. Earnestly, devotedly. "I should rather like to spend my life in your company, Miss Fairchild." A pause. Her voice was scarcely more than a whisper. "I believe I should like that too." They leaned toward each other in a moment of perfect understanding, when, quite suddenly, there came a knock at the door. The postman, apologetic but duty-bound, handed over a sealed letter. Miss Fairchild opened it with trembling hands. Her eyes skimmed the words and grew wide. "It is from the publisher," she said. "And?" Mr. Ashworth leaned forward. "They wish to publish the novel immediately, and they have requested a sequel." He laughed aloud and seized her hand. "Then we must marry at once," he declared, "for we cannot possibly begin the next chapter until you are Mrs. Ashworth." She smiled. "Let us write many more chapters, Mr. Ashworth." And so they did, both in fiction and in love.